At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Coming up on episode 205 of Wheel Bearings, we've got Robbie in the Mercedes-Benz EQS. Nicole's got the 2020 Mini convertible John Cooper Works. I've got the 2021 Genesis GV80. We've got lawsuits over delivery fees, low inventory, Rivian delayed, Chevy bolts on fire, and a ban on internal combustion in the EU by 2035. All that and more coming up next. Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. This is episode 205 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Abu-Al-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
And I am Nicole Wakeland from Auto Bytel.
And I am Roberto Baldwin from Engadget.
Excellent. And what have you all been driving this week? Let's start with Nicole.
Oh, we start with me. Okay, I was actually really excited about this car because they don't often get cars from this company. It had a Mini, which is just about the cutest car on the entire planet in any version. It's adorable. This is the 2022 Mini.
Are we talking a mini or a maxi mini?
A little Mini. It's a Mini John Cooper Works convertible. It's mini.
Ooh.
It's tiny.
Oh, excellent.
It's super cute. And it was funny because when they pulled it into the driveway, I love all the weird custom stuff you can do to, like, what do you want your roof to look like? What do you want your side mirrors to look like? Like all this custom stuff. The one I have, the convertible top, has a Union Jack on it. So it's like a black top with sort of like a gray, a different fabric that has a Union Jack
on the convertible?
Yeah, on the convertible, on the actual fabric that's the top. So I looked out my window to see what was there, and it was like a little Union Jack looking up at me. It's really cute.
Cool.
Yeah,
I've seen that on the coupes, but on the hardtops, but I've never seen that on one of the convertibles before.
They do, and it's neat because, like, if you think the fabric of the convertible is just like, think of your basic black fabric, but then the Union Jack is gray, but it's almost like it's a herringbone pattern. So it's a slightly different, it's not just a different color, it's actually a different, like, material pattern. It looks really cool. Yeah. And I think it's cool because the company...
silk screened or...
No, I believe
like, is
it's
it
actually
printed or is it stitched?
I don't think it's printed.
Colors?
It looks like it's stitched. I could probably find out because Hart's, the guys who make the convertible tops for like 99.9% of the convertibles on the planet, are in Massachusetts, right next door. I may even see him at a local event. I will ask. I will find out. If it's silk screened, I will tell you. But I'm pretty sure it's actually woven into the fabric. So that's what I have this week. And I never have minis. I think this is the second time, maybe the third time I've ever driven one. Haven't put the top down for more than 30 seconds because I'm in New England and what we're currently doing is building arcs because it hasn't stopped raining for 3 weeks.
Wow.
So it's just rain, 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 rain. So I put it down for a hot minute. It was fun, and then I had to put it right back up again because it's been raining. So we'll see. I got it a couple more days. Maybe I'll get to drive it more with the top down. But I like this. It there is that cuteness. I mean, it's an incredibly appealing car to just look at, and this one is red. Like I said, the Union Jack thing. It's got that cute little kid smile when you drive by kind of thing happening. And even the interior is that way. Everything's like very round and very bulbous, and there's cute colors. You adjust the radio, and the colors on the, like, around the infotainment system turn one color, and you adjust your air conditioning and they turn another color. And it's the most entertaining little car to drive. But it is also it's also a sporty little thing. So last week I had the Civic sedan, which is a perfectly fine sedan, and I drove it a lot because I had a little bit of a road trip, and I had just gotten out of that, and they took it, and then I get into this an hour later, and for a second I thought, oh my gosh, this feels so harsh. It was so tight. I'm like, no, this is just not the relaxed Civic sedan. It's got some sportiness to it. So for a second, it was almost disconcerting, like the difference between the two. And then my brain went, yeah, but you actually like this. Calm down, Nicole. This is fine.
Well, and I think you had the John Cooper Works, right? So it's even sportier. Not quite the sportiest. I don't think they have the GP edition in the convertible. I think that's only for a coupe.
No.
But,
yes.
But it's definitely it's going to be tighter.
Yeah, and it's the power, and it's a twin turbo 4-cylinder with 228 horsepower and 236 pound-feet of torque. 228 is a good number, but it's a really good number in a car this small. This is such a tiny little thing. It's not like this is a huge, heavy SUV that we're moving down the highway.
Comparatively tiny by modern standards.
By modern standards.
Yeah.
It has it has a back seat. I mean, there's one there. You could technically put people there if they took their knees and folded them up against their chest like a pretzel. Otherwise, the seat's two people. We went out last night. My husband's like, "Why aren't we taking the Mini?" I'm like, "You want to sit in the back?" He's like, "Oh yeah, 3 of us can't fit in there." So it's really a 2-seater. I mean, it doesn't say that, but it is, and it's not the cheapest 2-seater on the planet either. So the base price on this is $38,900. I had a lot of options added on there, brought the price on the one I'm driving to $46,250. Exactly. Whew. That's
a maxi mini price.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of pricey, but the thing is, it really is a sporty and very fun car to drive. I mean, it's very tight handling. It's very aggressive. The only time that the sportiness sort of works against it is it does get harsh if you hit a pothole. Like, you hit a pothole, you don't realize it's there. You will know it's there once the wheels of this car have gone through it, because it is harsh under those circumstances. And there is a drive mode selector where you can pick like sport. I forgot, it's like sport and normal, and I think there's 3. The sport mode does make a huge difference. You put it in sport and the neighbors will hear your exhaust 4 doors down. And it gets all burbly and crackly, and it sounds fantastic. But as small as it is, the back seat, not really usable, but I don't know. I owned a Beetle once upon a time, a turbo Beetle, back when the new Beetles first came out. Nobody pick on me. I loved that thing. But the neat thing about it was it's so round that even though it's a really tiny car, inside it felt big because it was the roof is just higher than you expect for a small car. My husband's 6'3", and he was always surprising that he could sit in that thing and not be squashed. It was kind of the same way with the Mini. The Mini has a surprise, it's got a sort of a boxy design to it. It's not like this low squished, small. It's tiny in terms of how many people it can fit, but it's roomy if you're just using the front seats. So he's 6'3". He still fit in there without feeling like, his head was about to brush the top of the car, which I think is kind of neat. My biggest criticisms of this, and this is a weird criticism. So there's a thigh adjuster that you can adjust the seat out for your thigh. And I don't need that. But when you close it as tight as it will get, it's not all the way closed. So there's like this little gap between your seat and the thigh extender. And when you sit down, it feels weird. It feels like you have something, like the little seam feels strange. And it's this little gap, which doesn't seem like a big deal until you keep thinking like it's almost like you sat on the edge. Like, is the seatbelt under my leg? What is under my leg? Is there a straw wrapper there? What did I sit on? And no, that's just actually how the seat is made. So that was a little weird. In fact, it's enough of a gap that I rolled up a straw wrapper from my McDonald's Diet Coke and I dropped it and it fell directly between. So I had to extend the little thing so I could reach it and take the little straw wrapper out and not give that back to them. And the other thing that I found a little awkward in the few moments that I had the top down, once you have it down, you have no rear view whatsoever. It sticks up even when it's folded completely. It's up at enough at an angle that you really can't use your rearview mirror. Like, you have the narrowest of views over the top of that. And I realize, like, if you're in a parking lot, you can turn around, but I'm not like turning around and looking over my head on a highway. So you're really having to rely 100% on your side view mirrors to see what's behind you when you're changing lanes. Because once that top is down, it doesn't come low enough that you can still see over the top of it in your rearview mirror.
Oh.
This is one of the downsides of having such a small car and making it convertible, is that there's nowhere to stow that mechanism inside the bodywork. It basically has to stack on top of the rear bodywork.
Yeah, and it really does, which, you still have side view mirrors. I mean, you can pack an SUV full of stuff and have no rear view mirror because you blocked your view, and you just use side view mirrors. But it's disconcerting because your habit, when I drive, you check your mirrors, you check all three of them, side mirrors and the rear view mirror. You go to check that rear view mirror and you kind of want to do this like duck thing. Like, if I change my angle, can I see? Nope, there's no seeing at that. Just use the side mirrors.
Yeah, it's been a while since I drove a mini. The last several minis I've had have all been like Countrymen's and Clubman's and stuff, and it's probably been a decade since the last time I had a Cooper or a convertible. I mean, and so it's when the last time I drove one of those, I mean, it was even smaller than it is now. And it was a lot of fun to drive, and it sounds like it's they've kept that fun to drive feel of the Mini in this latest generation.
Oh, 100%. It is truly fun. And once when you listen to that exhaust note and you hit the gas hard to merge onto a highway, and it feels great, it sounds great, it's absolutely a joy. So it makes that rather pricey price tag a little bit easier to swallow, because if I buy this, I'm having all this fun every time I get on the highway, and I'm having all this fun every time I take a twisty, because it's so tight on side roads. If you're on little country roads, slinging it through the corners is truly, truly fun. So I enjoyed the heck out of it. This was a good car. I'll be sad when they take this one away in 2 days.
Yeah, it's a fun car. I had the coupe, I don't know, a year ago, 8 months ago. The only issue for me was that I could not get comfortable in the seats. For the life of me, I could not figure out a way to not be uncomfortable in those seats.
It was that stupid thigh extender.
Maybe. Everything else about the car I really liked, but I was just like, I couldn't buy this car because of these seats. And it was the John Cooper Works version. I've driven the other ones and it's fine, but I don't know, somehow they found the perfect measurements to stab my spine in all the right or wrong places, as you may. But no, it was great. It was fun to drive. It's it's like a souped up. I mean, everyone likes to say this, but it's like a souped up go-kart.
Mm-hmm. It is a little bit like a souped up go-kart, and cuter than a souped up go-kart. It's just really cute. It's adorable.
And this is exactly why you should never ever buy a car sight unseen without actually sitting in it first. At least sit in it. Preferably take it for a very thorough test drive, but at the very least sit in it, because the thing that people probably think about the least when they buy a car, but that may well be the single most important feature of the car, is the seats. No matter what else you do with the car, you're gonna have to sit in those seats, and if you can't get comfortable, you are going to be miserable for as long as you own that car. Yep. So, absolutely take it for a test drive. And maybe if the John Cooper Works seats don't work for you, try one of the lower trims, Cooper or Cooper S. And actually they're a lot more affordable too. Like, I'm just looking at the Mini website. The base Cooper convertible starts at $28,000, and the Cooper S, which is 189 horsepower. The base one is 134. The Cooper S is 189. So it's not that much slower than the John Cooper Works. Starts at 32. And if you're a little more judicious with the options list and maybe forego the Union Jack on the roof, you could. Because the reality is, if you're going to buy a convertible, you should be driving it with the top down anyway. So you should never ever see that whatever's on the roof of a convertible. So therefore, you should skip that and drive it top down.
But I live in New England.
You save a lot of money.
New England, where it's too cold. There's very many months of the year where the top would probably shatter and freeze when you opened it up. The fabric would just
start blasting the heater, and it'll be fine. It won't be too cold. You start blasting the heater, and everything will work out fine.
Yeah, just turn up the heat.
You come out here in January.
If you get heated seats,
when it's
little
5
hat
below.
On, put some goggles on.
Okay, sure.
I want to
see you come out here in January. I'll get this.
I've driven convertibles in that kind of weather.
I did. It's like the Iditarod.
But you do occasionally. It's snowing. It's raining. There are moments when it's just not feasible to put the top down.
If you're driving fast enough, the rain won't hit you. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, is that the key? Okay, that'll be up for trying.
Yes,
I'll give that a
exactly.
try, Roberto. That'll work. Okay.
The wind will blow the rain away. You just got to keep going faster.
Yeah.
Oh, it's raining harder. Got to speed
Can't
up.
slow down. It's raining.
Yeah.
Can't stop for this light. It's raining.
Sorry, guys. It's raining. I got to run this red light.
Yeah, I mean, I took the Miata out on Sunday for a couple of hours, and it was glorious. Top down, 83 degrees, sun was shining. It was amazing. That's the way it should be. All right. Anything else on the Mini John Cooper Works convertible?
No, that was it. That pretty much covers it.
Excellent. So I believe you went on a little trip last week, Robbie. Where somewhere that's not in the United States.
I did. I went to Europe last week, which was weird because you have to wear a mask the entire time, which is fine because germs and COVID and not wanting to die and whatnot. But I've traveled a few times. I've flown a few times while wearing masks, and you have to wear it in the airport. You have to wear it on the plane, and the biggest issue is that it starts to rub against your ear. So I have to figure out a solution for that for my next trip. But I went to Switzerland to drive the new Mercedes EQS, essentially their electric S-Class. Flew into Switzerland, drove around the Swiss Alps, which were ridiculously amazing, and the vehicle itself, I'm just going to say just up front, I'm not going to try to. It drives better than the S-Class. Done. There you go. It's the S-Class, but without the vibration, without the noise. It's almost eerily quiet inside the vehicle. Whenever I test a vehicle, especially on a drive program, I don't turn on the radio. I don't turn on. I drive it for as at least 3/4 of the time that I'm going to be behind the wheel. I drive it without any music or any whatever talk radio, podcast, whatever you want to listen to, so I can sort of hear how it sounds. And it's so we were on the freeway, we were on back roads, we were driving through little towns, which were all very delightful. And everywhere you took it, it was just nice and quiet and smooth, and just it's an S-Class that just happens to have a different powertrain, and it's sort of nuts. And if you're looking at an S-Class and you're like, oh, should I get the S-Class, or should I spend, I'm sure there's going to be a price premium. They haven't announced pricing yet. Or should I get the EQS? I'm almost certain you should probably get the EQS, especially if you're going for something that is, you're going for that luxury. You're not, we drove 3 different vehicles. We drove the rear-wheel drive 450 Plus, the 584 Matic, and then the first edition, which is just a 584 Matic with a bunch of stuff on it, and that 2-tone paint job, which I'm not really sold on. It's like the Maybach 2-tone type of paint job. So, but it's all 3 of them. The 580, that's that torque, that lower end torque, it had 631 pound-feet of torque, which is sort of ridiculous in any vehicle.
Adequate.
Yeah, you stomp on the gas and you're like, yeah, you're moving a pretty large, a hefty vehicle, and it delivered every time. But you don't. That's if you're somebody who just absolutely has to have the power of the 584 Mac. You need you're someone who's obsessed with that low end torque, who wants to just stomp and go. Driving the rear wheel drive 450 Plus, completely fine. It was it still has that power, obviously not nearly as much as the 580. But it was, I drove that through the Alps on switchbacks, and it was great. It was wonderful. It was, it was smooth. It was, it was more than adequate power. It's everything about both of those vehicles, and there is a very distinct difference between the vehicles, especially when it comes to power and a bit with handling. But I think most people are going to be happy with the 450 Plus. It's rear-wheel drive. No one's, there are people who are going to try to push the S-Class to its limits. So the EQS, they're going to, I'm going through the mountains, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But most people are just, they're on the freeway, they're driving through the city. 450 Plus, you're fine. Yeah.
Do both of them have the same size battery?
Yes, they both have the same size battery, and the WLTP figure is about 780 kilometers. It's a little bit less with the 580 Plus. I did some
475 miles.
So I'm thinking with EPA probably around 400-ish, high
between 350 and 400 probably.
Yeah, so the range is, they haven't announced any range numbers with the EPA. They wouldn't announce like targets for it, but if it hit like 380, if they announced 375, 380, I wouldn't be surprised. They said 400, I'd probably be a little bit surprised. But I'm guessing it's going to be up there in the high 300s, which is, if you're paying a lot of money for an S-Class, you're expecting quality, and you're expecting not to have the hassle of like having to pull over every 200 miles to charge your battery. So yeah, you're going to get all the accoutrements that you would expect from an S-Class, which includes not having to get out and charge as much as possible. And both of them have a 107.8 kilowatt hour battery pack. So
okay,
yeah.
So it sounds like this one's a lot more efficient than their first EVs, like the EQC that they launched in Europe a couple of years ago, but never brought to the U.S. market, because I think it only had just over 200 miles range WLTP, and it would have been well short of that here.
Yeah, I went on that EQC drive program because they were going to bring it to the United States, and it was very much a Mercedes SUV. There was you felt the Mercedes quality, and it just happened to be an EV was essentially what that vehicle was. And then they decided not to go with that and do the EQS, which I think if you're people who are waiting for the EQC, they were probably a little disappointed. But I think trying to make a larger splash in the United States with an EV, the EQS is going to do a much, it's going to be the halo vehicle for them, and they come out with that to show, hey, this is what we can do, as we're battling against the Model S, which really, I mean, the Model it's a price comparison mostly. It's not really a Model S. It goes fast. It is not an S-Class though, and I think anyone who's ever sat in an S-Class and sat in a Model S, if you try to compare them in terms of luxury and just build quality, it's almost night and day. I mean,
not even close. It's
not even close.
Same.
Yeah,
like you can't.
I think maybe the closest thing to this might be the Lucid Air.
Yeah,
that's really more targeted at this kind of luxury feel.
Yeah, the Lucid Air, they're really going after the Germans. That's essentially what they've told me time and time and again. They're going after the German premium luxury vehicles. So
what did you think of the new infotainment system in this one, the new version of MBUX, that's got the edge to edge, glass panel, stretches from pillar to pillar, glass panel,
hyper screen,
different displays in there. Yeah, the hyper screen. That's
the hyper screen. So it's 56 inches of glass, and they're very proud. They're very proud of the hyper screen. It looks nice. It's essentially 56 inches of glass that they worked with Corning, Gorilla Glass, but they also had to work with other suppliers because Corning didn't think they could build it. They could do it. They're like, "Oh, you guys are crazy. This isn't gonna work. This is ridiculous." And it's curved. It's long. It's weird shaped. It's curved. Like all these things. And Corning's like, "I don't know if this can happen." Like, "Oh, no, we can do it." And they did it. And behind it are three different displays. There's the 12.3 inch dash cluster. There's the 17.7 inch OLED touchscreen, and then the 12.3 inch passenger display, which is right there, that you can use to control media. You can do a lot of the stuff you can do with MBUX, media and navigation wise from that screen. And so it's sort of ridiculous, but it's also an S-Class, so
it has to be ridiculous.
It has to. You really have to. When you're Mercedes, you kind of have to push the limit with every S-Class without losing that luxury feel. And with the EQS, they've done it. I didn't give a lot of chances to work to deal with the or to test the passenger display because of COVID. Typically on these drive programs, you're paired up with another journalist, and you drive and you switch off, and then they drive and you switch off. Because of COVID, we all had individual cars, which is nice because you get to drive the car the entire time. But at the same time, I usually, like when we'd switch, I'd write my notes down. I can push things and touch things that I can't do while I'm driving. But it was, it's unfortunately I didn't get a chance because the display doesn't turn on. It just has what do you call it? Like a screensaver on it when there's not a passenger sitting in that seat. So you can set it to like they have images of their avatar-based concept car, but you can also set like a compass or a clock there. I put it on the compass because I don't know, felt cooler. And
what about the center display? Where they've talked about the center display, they've talked about this idea of the zero layer interface. Where you've got the navigation and then some widgets floating on top of that.
It was, I was, I remember they showed it off to me at the unveiling, and I was a little hesitant that I'm like, oh, okay, well, I don't know. I'm sure everyone's just going to want to go back to the sort of tablet display that we've become used to, which is the regular MBUX display. I like the zero layer. I kept it on the zero layer almost the entire time, and it surfaces information that you need as you're driving. And then if you drive the car for a few weeks, it starts to learn your routine. So if you have a meeting, let's say you do in your car every Wednesday at 9 a.m., it'll start to surface that like, oh, we should turn down the music, we should do this, we should do that. It surfaces navigation to where you're going. So it gets a bit smarter as you train it. But what is weird is that you have the 17.7-inch OLED touchscreen, and the steering wheel actually covers some of the touchscreen. So while you're driving, you can't see about an inch and a half, 2 inches of the left side of the screen. But Mercedes knows this, and they've moved all the widgets that much over. So it has this very large. So it's this very, very large wide screen that the driver can't see the entirety of. And Mercedes knows this, so they move the widget over just enough so you can see it. So while I'm driving, I could still see. So I didn't even notice it until someone brought it up because I could still see, my directions, the controls for, how I want the display to be for the navigation. Like everything that I wanted was there. So initially I didn't notice that, and someone brought it up. They're like, yeah, you can't see the very left edge of the screen. I was like, what? And then I got in the car and I'm like, oh, you're right. And Mercedes was like, yeah, we are aware of that. We moved everything over. You still have this big, beautiful screen though. And so like everyone else in the car can see the entire screen.
But your passenger can see it all.
Yeah, your passenger can see it all. Everyone can see everything that's going on. But it's sort of an odd decision to say, okay, well, why don't we just make a smaller screen? And they're like, no. Yeah.
or shift the whole screen, the display over, an inch or two.
No, it's a large piece of display real estate. And I think they were just like, we're going to shove as much screen in there as possible, even if it means you're not going to be able to see it all.
It's there.
It's there. And when you look at it, you're like, okay, it looks symmetrical, it looks nice and fine and everything. But it is very, it was sort of like, oh, okay, that's a thing you're doing. Cool.
So maybe it's a little bit too hyper.
It's too hyper. Here's the fun thing is that the gentleman who is essentially like the father of the hyperscreen, he's also a big fan of this band called Scooter. And Scooter had this song called Hyper Hyper. It's like this dance track from like the 90s. So everyone go look up Scooter Hyper Hyper. And he was very excited to share that information about because we were talking about how the name came about, and he was just like, oh, this song Hyper Hyper. So of course we all like started looking on our phones for Hyper Hyper, and it's very much a 90s like house trance or not trance house song. So it's if you want to dance, listen to Hyper Hyper by Scooter.
We'll include that in the show notes. Cool. So when's it going to be on sale in the U.S.?
So it'll land in the United States this fall. Again, they have not announced pricing, but it's an S-Class, it's it's an EV. So it's not going to be, it's not cheap. You're talking, it's going to be a pricey endeavor. How much the price premium will be above the S-Class is yet to be seen. Maybe Mercedes can pull a fast one and make it, not parity, but pretty close, which would be especially for California where, they sell a lot of S-Classes and they sell a lot of EV, and we buy a lot of EVs. If they can get it within like $15,000, I think the EQS is going to do pretty well. I will say that the design language it looks like a Mercedes, but it also sort of looks very bulbous. And that's if you want a 0.2 drag coefficient, that's kind of what you end up having to do. No, I don't know if I can say that I love it, but I like it. How's that? Especially when you think about, okay, well, I'm getting this many miles, and it's still when you again, you're sitting inside most of the time. It's like the first Panamera where everyone liked it until they saw it.
Yeah. Are there any plans for an AMG version?
I'm not sure.
Did you talk about that at all?
No.
Yeah, I assume at some point there will be an AMG.
Everything that Mercedes-Benz makes is at least gets the AMG trim level at some point. So I'm sure they'll probably, especially with something that's they're essentially their Halo vehicle, their Halo tech vehicle, which this is. I also will say that it does not have the 3D dash cluster because the display is curved. And the 3D technology, that sort of interlacing they have to do, has to be on a flat surface, and they can't do it with the curve of the dash cluster.
Okay.
So that's okay. And then again, that's such a weird, almost gimmicky feature on the S-Class that I was like, well, yeah, fine, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, actually, the car I was driving did have a 3D dash cluster, so we'll get to that in a second. Any other thoughts on the EQS?
I really liked it. I was, it's every time you get into an S-Class, you know that you're in an S-Class. This is an S-Class, and it impressed me with just how smooth, and Mercedes have to appeal to the person who's been buying an S-Class for the last 3 generations, and they have to tell that person, okay, this is what you're used to, but better because it's an EV. And I think they've done that. I think that's I can't afford an S-Class. I don't know how many of our listeners can, but the people who can, Mercedes has to make sure it hits that level, and they did with the EQS.
Excellent. All right. So I was driving the Genesis GV80, which I first drove. I did the first drive last fall here in Michigan, and I had one for a week. And so this is, Genesis, the first SUV from Genesis. Let's put it that way. And it's based on the same architecture. Yeah, the same platform architecture as the new G80. And clearly, when you look at it, you can see the resemblance, especially in the design language, this new Genesis design language, where the front lamps, you've got the double horizontal strips of light, the oversized grille, which, while I'm not a huge fan of oversized grills, I think is better executed than what BMW's done and what a lot of companies have done. But I still think it could stand to be a little smaller. But the overall shape of this thing, I think, is really good. The details, the design details on this thing, I think, it's a great looking vehicle. And I think for somebody looking for a premium luxury utility, kind of in that upper mid-size class, kind of X5, Q7, Audi Q7 size. This is something that I think is a very reasonable competitor. It's available with 2 engine options: the 2.5 liter turbo or 3.5 liter twin turbo V6. The 2.5 is a 4-cylinder. I had the 3.5. It was the top end Prestige model. So this is a GV80 all-wheel drive 3.5T Prestige. And it was pretty much loaded with everything. One of the things when I first sat in the GV80 a couple of years ago at the LA Auto Show, And Rebecca Lindland and I were sitting in this thing in LA, looking at it, checking out the interior. These new Genesis vehicles, they've done it. I think largely done an amazing job on the interiors, with the materials and the finishes that they've got on there. Some of the detailing, on the knobs, the knurling that they've done on the knobs, to give you some grip there. I think looks great, largely feels great to the touch. Works really well. It feels really premium. It feels expensive. It doesn't look or feel in any way cheap. You would certainly, you sit in this thing, you would, you would not, you'd probably not think that this comes from a brand, from the same company that makes Hyundais, that makes a Hyundai Accent, or a Venue. And yet, this is where the Genesis brand has evolved to. The first Hyundai Genesis a decade ago, 13 years ago, was a high-end Genesis, and I think, I think they had some challenges trying to convince people that Hyundai could make a premium luxury car, and it was the first Genesis was a really good car in many respects, but they eventually split off the brand into its own separate sub-brand, and Genesis has had its challenges with dealers and trying to get the brand established, but this is a fantastic vehicle. The one complaint I have about the functionality in the interior, and I mentioned this last fall when I first drove it, as we've mentioned before, this is one of those vehicles that doesn't have a touchscreen. The display is set up on top of the dash, away, out of your reach, so you can't touch it. And there's a central controller, but unlike a BMW iDrive or some of the other central controllers, it doesn't sit up above the center console. It's actually kind of flush with the console, and it's actually kind of concave. So it's like a little dish in the middle of the console, and around the perimeter of it has the same kind of knurling that's on the other knobs and controls, which looks really nice, but the problem is, while that knurling works well when, in compression, when you're squeezing a knob, it's got enough texture to it, that you can get a nice grip on it, and turn it very precisely. In this case, the knurling is kind of on the top surface. So when you're rotating this controller, instead of grabbing it and twisting it the way you would a BMW iDrive controller, you're kind of rotating, putting your finger on it and rotating it, kind of like the old, first and second generation iPods. If you remember the classic iPods with the click wheel, so it's very similar to that, but you actually you turn it. So it's really more like the very first generation iPods, which actually had a physical wheel that turned. The later ones, it became a capacitive surface that you swiped your finger around it. This, is like those first ones where it turns, but there's, there's not quite enough texture there that sometimes, you have to press down hard enough on it to turn it. That, this also acts as a rocker control, to go up and down in menus and things like that. And so sometimes you end up pressing it a little bit too hard, and you end up clicking when all you really wanted to do was spin it to go up and down a menu or across a screen. And I've noticed this on the G80, on the new G80, and when I first drove the GV80, and hopefully what they'll do is they'll make some changes in the exact texturing of that surface on this controller on future model years. But right now, it takes some finesse to control it quite the way you want. But other than that, everything else about the interior of this thing works great. You mentioned the 3D instrument cluster, and that's an option on here. It's available on the Prestige model. And it's an interesting detail that when you first look at it, especially if you're using, the adaptive cruise control or, other driver assists, and you page over to, where it shows you your vehicle and where other vehicles are around you, you actually see that 3D, and you can see some 3D depth in the gauges and so on. So it kind of looks, rather than just being a flat LCD display, it looks a little more like a traditional mechanical gauge cluster. So it looks pretty. I mean, it obviously doesn't add any functional improvement to it, but it looks a little prettier. But the driver assist display, I think, is kind of neat, because you do get more of that 3D effect there than you do like with the gauges and so on. And so you see, your car on there, and when you're following somebody else, you can kind of perceive that depth, between your car and the one in front of you. And this one, unlike most systems, with lane centering or lane keeping assist, this one actually shows the cars in your adjacent lanes as well, much like a Tesla does with autopilot. And so you can see those other cars, as you go by them, and so you'll see what the sensors are detecting. One of the unique things that they've done with the lane centering system, when you're using the highway drive assist, which is their hands-on combination of adaptive cruise control and lane centering, when you're going down the highway, if in the adjacent lane there is a large vehicle, a truck or a bus or something in the adjacent vehicle, if there's nobody to your left on the opposite side, as you're going down the lane, normally it keeps you tracks pretty well right in the center of the lane. But as you approach another vehicle to either side, it will actually nudge your vehicle over just slightly. And if you're watching the mirrors, you can see it. You can see that you're getting a little bit closer to the center line opposite the vehicle. So just to give you a little bit more room, a little bit more clearance to that large vehicle on the other side, which I think is an interesting touch. And I haven't seen any other manufacturer do that yet. And it's something that I think an attentive human driver will often do. And it's good to see them starting to incorporate those kinds of things into these driver assists.
Yeah, the Super Cruise, when the initial launch, it would be like right up against the car. It would just center it, you versus like the giant truck. And so you're just always like, because naturally as a human, you kind of move over.
So I think nervous.
I think they adjusted that. I have a Super Cruise Escalade coming in the next few weeks. So I'll double check it, but I think they were adjusting that so it nudged over just the scooch, just so you wouldn't have that, because you'd be driving and on paper and as a math problem, it was correct that you were like, oh yeah, it's in the center of the lane, but when you're driving, you're like, oh dear God, I didn't realize how much I move over, and even if it's only a few inches whenever I pass a big rig in a vehicle. And so I think, the sort of like scooching over just a little bit is such a human thing to do when you're going, because we know that a wind gust could move that truck into your lane. We know that anything could like sort of move that truck into your lane, and it comes over like a wave, the first and then the back, and then it doesn't come over as one solid piece. So I think as humans, we know that there's a potential for danger when we're passing the giant truck, and so it's good to see that Genesis has taken that into account. And I think they've adjusted it for Super Cruise, but I'll double check in a week. I don't know. Whenever I get to car.
Yeah, I drove the Escalade with Super Cruise a couple of months ago, and I didn't really notice it doing that there. But actually, as we're recording this on Wednesday morning or Tuesday morning, tomorrow I'm actually going out to Milford, the Milford Proving Grounds, GM's Proving Grounds, to drive the GMC Sierra with Super Cruise, and we're actually going to be doing some towing with Super Cruise, which will be interesting, and I'll ask them about that if they're doing that, because I don't think that they're doing that in Super Cruise just yet, but. the engine that was in this GV80, as I said, was the twin turbo 3.5 V6. It's got 375 horsepower, 391 pounds-feet of torque. So it's got plenty of performance, 8-speed automatic transmission, very smooth shifting, no issues there. It's got decent steering feel to it. So this is Genesis' first SUV that they've launched. They've subsequently also launched the GV70, which is a little smaller, based on the G70 platform. The base price for the G80, or GV80, the most affordable version of it, is the 2.5 four-cylinder with rear-wheel drive, which starts at $49,000. The Prestige model I drove came to $72,995, including the delivery charge. And that includes the Prestige package with the 22-inch wheels, Napa leather, electronic limited slip rear diff, micro suede headliner, the 3D cluster. That's all that stuff's part of a $6,600 Prestige package. It was, you can probably forego that. That'll drop you down into the mid 60s if you take a pass on that stuff. The Lexicon 21 speaker audio system does sound really good. It's got a really nice audio system. So I think if you're driving this thing, you will feel very, very comfortable in this. It's a very serene experience. I think as I said, if you're in the market for something like an Audi Q7, BMW X5, maybe a little smaller than an X7, I think, or the Mercedes GLS. I guess this would kind of fall somewhere in between the GLE and the GLS. I think that this is definitely something that you ought to be considering if you're in the market for something like that. It's definitely better, in terms of if you need a 3-row utility, it's definitely a much better option than, say, the Lexus RX 3-row, which is the RX should not be offered with a 3-row. It's too small for that. This actually has a reasonably usable 3rd row. It's not huge, but it's usable. So I think there's a lot to like about this thing. And the color was great. The sort of burgundy red color that was on it, I thought looked fabulous. And they also have some other really good colors on there. There's a really nice dark green that they have. So that is the Genesis GV80. Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's EXPRESSVPN.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. And let's get into some news items.
News.
We've talked previously, and I think we've talked, since you guys have been on the show about delivery charges. And I know we definitely talked about it when Dan and Rebecca were still with us. One of the things that automakers have been doing over the last couple of years is they've been sneakily raising prices by increasing the delivery fees, which are mandatory fees that you have to pay. It's not like you can skip the delivery fee and just go to the factory gate and pick it up and avoid that delivery fee, which can range anywhere from $1,000 to $1,700. I think Ford has really gone overboard with this on the new F-150s, where they're charging about $1,700 for delivery.
Wow. This
is a mandatory fee, which typically in advertising, when they advertise the price of a car, they don't include the delivery charge. But it's something you have to pay, and I think if it's a mandatory price, is a mandatory fee, just roll it into the MSRP and be done with it. But there is now a class action lawsuit, and this actually goes back a few years, even before the delivery charges really started to get out of hand. The original suit was filed by the owner of a 2019 Lincoln MKX, who purchased the car in 2019, and at the time, the delivery charge on that vehicle was just $995. So imagine what this person would have thought if they bought a new F-150.
Today, they lose their mind.
According to the article here, it says the plaintiff argues that she didn't know at the time that the $995 Ford destination fee she paid generated a profit for the automaker, and claims that most consumers aren't aware of this fact either. I'm not a fan of the way they do delivery fees.
But does it make a difference? Like, I get the delivery fee is crazy high. Like, okay, it's you know, the numbers have gotten ridiculous. But what did you think? Like, would you have not bought the car if you thought that wasn't profit? Like, oh, it's just covering their delivery fee. Cool. I'll buy your car. Oh, wait, you're making money on it? I'm out. Forget it. Like, the reason there is kind of weird. Like, you're paying. Who cares whether they make a profit on it or not? You do know it's in there. They do show you. You did go, yup, I'll pay it.
But it sounds like it's costing them $1,000 to move it from point A to point B. And you feel like, okay, well, it's like you're paying for shipping when you buy something from, I have to pay. It's like when I buy something not from Amazon, from someone else, and it's $20 to ship it. I know that they have to pay $20 to FedEx or UPS or U.S. Postal Service, and it's $20. The fact that they call it the delivery fee and they don't pay that.
But they don't but your delivery fee isn't always
they do
your
have
fee.
to pay.
Like, they have to pay something to ship it to you. But like when you order on Amazon, it's like, okay, we're shipping to, or any place, it's like you're on this half of the country, it's $5. You're a little further, it's $10. You're a little further, it's $20. But you might maybe it only cost them $3.22 to ship that with packing and everything else, and they actually made $1.88 on your. Like, you wouldn't, like, the numbers are way smaller. I mean, $1.88.
You could say the same thing about Ford. It's $1,000 in Michigan if you buy a Ford. It's $1,000 in California if you buy a Ford.
Right, but I mean, so even
and if it's a set price that they're adding to every vehicle, just add it to the price of the car. It's such a
Why did they break it out? Does anybody know? Like, what was the original reason for saying we can make it separate?
It used to be up until, I want to say, like the late 80s or early 90s, that the delivery fee actually did depend on where the vehicle was coming from. It was variable. So it wasn't the same across the board. So, for example, the Ford Rouge assembly plant where they build F-150s is 20 miles from my house. If I bought one up the street here from my local dealer, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't cost Ford $1,700 to ship that vehicle.
You don't think?
To my local dealer.
You sure?
I'm fairly confident. I mean, I know that shipping charges can be a little exorbitant sometimes, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't cost them $1,700 to get it there. Now, to ship it from Dearborn to San Diego or to Dallas or somewhere, it's certainly going to cost them more than it's going to cost them to ship it here. And they used the delivery charges used to depend on where you lived and where the vehicle was coming from. At some point, I think it was the late 80s or early 90s, they changed that and made it just a flat fee, for any particular model. And it wasn't the same for every model. It varied. But it was a flat fee no matter where you lived and where it was coming from. And I think that's when the problem really started, because they wanted to make it simpler. But when they did that, at that point, they should have just said, okay, we're just going to roll this into the sticker price of the car. Now it's become kind of a bait and switch thing, because they'll advertise a lower price, and then all of a sudden when you're signing your paperwork, you realize, oh, now I've got to pay almost $2,000 more than the price that you advertised for this vehicle, because of this shipping fee that's not included on your billboard or on your ads, and that, I think that is misleading. Unfortunately, I think the legal argument that they're making in this particular lawsuit, I think, is kind of dubious. That Ford is making a profit on it. I don't care if they're making a profit on it.
That's the part of the lawsuit.
Fine.
That's what I don't get.
That's business.
I don't get it. I'm like, okay, if you can object to what anybody does with any of the money that you pay them, but they're not. I mean, the fee isn't hidden. Eventually, you do see it. Like, you sign that ginormous form, and there it is. Whatever exorbitant amount you're paying for, destination is on there. It's not like they hid it. Like, oh, we charged this and didn't put it on the form. No, it's there. What they use it for, I kind of feel like, however much they make on it, what they use it for, that's up to them. Like, do you want to pay this, what we call the destination fee, or not? Like, pay it or don't pay it. But what we do with the money once it's Ford's, have at it, Ford. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So it's a weird, I guess that's what my issue is. Like, it's a weird legal reason. It's not, this doesn't reflect the genuine destination fees, which would be a more solid reason. It's, I don't like that they're making money. Okay, well, they're going to make money on you one way or the other.
I mean, that's why companies are in business, to make money off you. So, I would like to, ultimately, I would like to see, that companies just, like I said, just include it in the sticker price. Just don't break it out, especially if it's something that you can't opt out of. Just roll it into the price. Because you're gonna pay it one way or another. If it's optional, and you can say, and you can say, no, I'll take delivery at the factory gates. Fine, then leave it as a separate item. But otherwise, because they don't charge you separately for tires or for windshield wiper blades or any other part of the car. This is no different. You pay optional, for more premium versions of some things, but you don't, just for having that there, or seats, you don't pay separately for seats.
Oh, they do list. I was writing up a car. I wish I could remember which one it was, but I was writing up a vehicle and I had to list, this breakout standard and optional features. And the standard features, they proudly listed a steering wheel. I'm like, well, good. I'm glad we don't have to pay. Not like it was a leather covered steering, just like steering wheel. Yes, that is a standard feature on our vehicles. I'm like, well, good for you, because I feel like that should be.
Well, you don't get it on the Tesla. You don't get a steering wheel. You get a steering yoke.
A steering device? Yeah, maybe
device.
That's it.
It's vice grips attached to a column.
Yeah, well, I mean, when Dodge sold the Challenger Demon a couple of years back, they actually, it only came with one seat. It only came with a driver's seat. If you wanted a passenger seat, you did pay extra for that. But I mean, it was included in a package. It was only like $100 extra. But it was just with a driver's seat. For going to the drag strip, they wanted to make it as light as possible. But this is something different. Just roll it into the price and advertise it that way and be done with it.
I'm cool with that.
Stop trying to sneak in.
If they would have rolled it into somehow.
Stop trying to hide your price increases.
Yeah, if they're trying to roll it into the price instead of making it its own little thing, cool. But like, mad because they are making a profit on it. That's why they're selling you cars, not out of the goodness of their heart, but to make ye oldie money. So get over that.
Yep.
All
right, next up.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's mostly so you can say $39.95, for your car, and then when you get there, it's $4,200 or it's $42,000.
Yeah, it keeps it under that threshold. You're like, I'm on my budget.
It does, because especially for California and New York, you have to be under a $60,000 threshold in order to get the EV credits. Like Polestar had to move, like adjusted the price of their car, the Polestar 2, in order to get the EV credit for the state. It's a state. It's not the federal one. You still get the credit, but for New York and California, it has to be under $60,000. So Polestar could say, okay, well it's $59,995, but then if they wanted to, they could put like a $4,000 destination fee on their car. And so
we can see maybe that's the secret sauce that we don't know. They're keeping the price deceptive, like they're keeping it under all these thresholds that we don't know about as marketing people, and that's it.
In California, is it based on the base MSRP or the transaction price of the car? So like if it's $59,995 and then you get $5,000 worth of options, does it become ineligible at that point, or is it still eligible because the base sticker price was under $60,000?
Oh, I'll have to check. That's
okay.
Yeah, I just know they were very much like they were very excited. Like we got it under this price, so now it's going to be available for this thing. So it might. The fact that they sent out a press release makes me think that it's possibly like it's the base price versus the buying price, but it could just say, we get you into this thing. Well, yeah, you're not going to get the $1,500 from California, but you got all these sweet options on your Polestar too, so it doesn't really matter.
Sweet options.
Yeah.
All these sweet options.
Yeah,
that needs to be the title of this podcast. Sweet options.
I know in Canada, they had there was a price threshold. I think it was $40,000, to get a certain tax credit for EVs. And so Tesla introduced a version of the Model 3 that they software limited the battery capacity. So it had the same 75 kilowatt hour battery capacity as all the other Model 3s, except they disabled 2/3 of it in software. So it had a 94-mile range, and they sold it for $39,995. So it could get that tax credit, but then you'd pay extra afterwards for an OTA update that unlocked the rest of the battery capacity.
See, there's a way around everything. They can make all the laws they want to make.
I just saw a story, that alone has cost Canadian taxpayers something like $115 million in tax credits from people buying this 94-mile range Model 3, and then just paying for the OTA update after the fact. And that's why I think, if you're going to do this sort of thing, if you're going to have a price cap, and I think it's perfectly legit to have a price cap, for tax incentives, make it on the transaction price, not on the base sticker price. So, all right. I'm just writing down the title, Sweet Options.
That has to be the title. Sweet
options. Yeah, they get you. Right. They pull you in. They get the sweet options on top of you, and then they
get you.
And then the destination fee, and now you're walking out with a $70,000 Polestar 2, and you're like, hey, what happened?
What happened? It's all those sweet options.
All those sweet options.
All right. So speaking of trying to buy anything right now, last week on the train to Chicago for the abbreviated Chicago Auto Show, I was talking to Michelle Krebs from Cox Automotive, and she was telling me that because Cox they do a lot of work with a lot of the things, their business units are working with dealers. They provide a lot of the back end services that dealers use, the various computer platforms that they use to track vehicles and inventory and sales, and they do auctions and things like that. So they've got access to all kinds of interesting data. And she told me that right now in the U.S., there is 24 days of inventory for new vehicles at dealers across the United States. And just for reference, what they normally target, what dealers normally try to have in stock is about 60 to 70 days worth of sales. So, if they sell, 10 cars a day, they would normally, they would try to have 600 cars. Yeah, 600 cars. Yeah, 600 cars in inventory if they're selling 10 cars a day. So bigger dealers would have less inventory, but 2 months of inventory is what they usually try to keep in stock. Right now they're at 24 days because of all the production holdups because of chip shortages. And so, that's, the upside of that for dealers is that they don't have to haggle on prices, and they don't have to do any rebates or discounts on cars. So dealers and manufacturers are getting higher transaction prices. And actually, in Ford's June sales release, they announced that their average transaction price in June for all their sales was up to $47,000. But that also means that for customers trying to buy a car, means you have very little choice and you're not going to get any kind of deal. So unless you really, really need to buy a vehicle right now, you're probably better off waiting until later in the fall or early next year, when there's more inventory available. Have either of you driven past any car dealerships lately?
I have. We actually bought a car not long ago.
Oh yeah,
so,
you just bought one.
Yeah, we just bought one, and it was the dealership. The lot is like empty. Like, normally you drive by the Jeep lot, it happened to be Jeep, and there's just oodles of Wranglers staring at you from the parking lot, and there were, I think, 3 sitting there. Oof. And he said, these will be gone by the weekend. Because this is all we've got, so they'll be gone. We'll be waiting for the next one. We have people just waiting for cars, and it also makes it hard to order what you want. Like, he was the sales guy had ordered something, and he said, he'd had it on order for almost 2 months, I think, something that should have taken a matter of weeks to get in, not because Jeep was doing anything wrong, just they can't get what they need to make the cars that they need, and they have all these priorities for what do we build, what do we ship, we take away from this lineup to build more of this one because we're selling more of this one. Oh wait, now sales are going the other way. We should have put that chip over here, So he was saying they're definitely having a challenge getting vehicles because it's just, he said there's no inventory. What comes in sells and is gone. Poof.
Yeah, from what I've been hearing from various manufacturers, there's a lot of cars that might normally take, 20 to 30 days or more, sitting on the dealer lots before they sell, are going, in 10, 15 days, or in some cases even less, in some cases, single digit number of days, when a car gets unloaded off the carrier until the time somebody buys it, it might be a week or less in some cases.
Wow.
So stuff's really moving. There's demand, but not enough supply. Mm-hmm. And speaking of not enough supply, Rivian announced another delay to deliveries of the R1T and the R1S. So if you've got, if you pre-ordered one of those, and you had the launch edition or first edition model was, you were expecting to get it this summer, it's going to be at least a couple more months, at least until September, before they start shipping those. And, in a letter to customers, from Rivian, they said, it's basically we're having trouble getting parts. We also had delays in getting the plant ready because of the pandemic. They were having trouble getting some of their equipment in and getting everything installed. So everything's just getting backed up. And so they, those vehicles won't be hitting the road until at least September, possibly even a little bit longer than that.
Do you think they'll hit September?
Maybe. We'll see.
You're only as fast as your slowest supplier. And everyone's supplier is very, very slow.
Everyone has
now.
someone in there who's really, really slow.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was on a briefing call, a roundtable with Duncan Aldred, the head of GMC at General Motors. And one of the things he talked about was the launch of the GMC Hummer EV, and he said right now they're still on track to deliver those sometime this fall. He didn't say when.
December 20th.
He didn't say how many.
One.
Yeah, no, I mean they'll hand over 3 of them, on December 30th.
We have delivered in 2021. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
so he didn't say how many, but he did say they would be coming out this fall. He also dodged the question I asked of, why does this thing weigh 9,000 pounds? Declined not to answer that one.
He didn't answer. I still wonder where does that come come from? I need to know why the thing weighs so much. It drives me. I don't know why it bothers me, but I'm like, why?
The roof panels are very
I know.
heavy.
It's like, I don't know.
It's got a bed. What's going on?
Cast iron skid plates, man. I tell you.
Cast iron skid plates.
Cast iron skid
that are
plates.
6 inches thick and
Everything lead.
lead.
Yeah.
All lead.
All lead.
Superman will see nothing when he looks
they-
inside that car. Everything's lead.
They decided that the Ultium batteries weren't going to work, and they're just going to go with lead acid batteries, 200 kilowatt hours of lead acid batteries. That's why it weighs 9,000 pounds.
Lead.
There you go. Done and done.
All right. Continuing with the EV theme, the Chevy Bolt. If you have one from the first 3 model years, so before they did the first refresh where they bumped it from a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack to a 65 kilowatt hour battery pack. So these were built from 2017 to 2019. Don't park it in your garage and leave it outside when you're charging it, because they've been having some issues with fires, as some other, and GM's not the only one. Hyundai had an issue with the Kona EV, and they're actually using the LG Chem cells and those same ones that I don't know if they're the same ones, but they're from the same factory that GM was using for the Bolt. The newer Bolts built from 2020 onwards that have the newer battery pack do not have this problem, but the older ones did have this issue. And GM's not talking specifics about what's the cause is, but it sounds like it's contamination inside the cells. So, and this is something that happened to both Ford and BMW in Europe last year, with some of their plug-in hybrids, with the Kuga, which is the European version of the Escape plug-in hybrid, and also the some of the BMW plug-in hybrids. They were using Samsung batteries from a plant built in Hungary, and they were having some fires. And it turned out that the problem was when you build these cells and you assemble it into a pack, you have to weld the terminals on the cells to make to connect them all together to make it into one big battery pack. And there was an issue with the process of welding those terminals that was causing little chunks of copper or aluminum to form inside the cell. And that's a bad thing, because then you get
Yikes.
Then that's when you get short circuits, and short circuits are when you get battery fires. So bad thing. So GM already did a software update that was supposed to limit the charging capacity of the Bolt batteries, but apparently at least 2 cars since the software update have also caught fire. So now they're just warning customers to don't park your car in the garage, or as soon as it's done charging, unplug it and put it outside. Make sure you leave. You're trying to minimize the risk if a fire does happen. So
the CNBC article that you have put up there that has a picture of the burned shell of a Bolt, the caption cracks me up. The Vermont State Police released this photo of the 2019 Chevy Bolt EV that caught fire on July 1st, 2021 in the driveway of State Rep Timothy Briglin, a Democrat. Like, that has anything to do with anything. Like, it was just like, we must tell you what his party was, because that's relevant. The Bolt's like, oh, I'm going to catch fire. He's a Democrat. Like, it's just the weirdest caption.
Or even the fact that he's a state rep,
Like, just caught fire on July 1st in the driveway of its owner. Who cares whose car it was? It was not a targeted battery fire.
I remember when the Hyundai, the Kona recall was happening, or before, or during, and whatever. But they, like Hyundai and LG, were like, we don't know. We just don't. They were like, we're going to recall these. We're not 100% sure why these are catching fire. It was just like, we're just throwing our hands in the air and saying, you know what? Forget it. We don't know why. Just bring us your car and we'll fix it. It was, and there was like indication that there was some sort of contamination, which makes sense because, like you said, short circuits equal heat, heat equals fire, fire equals you're having a bad day. But yeah, they were just like,
extremely bad day.
Yeah, here's like, so why are these? Like, we have no idea. We keep checking everything. We're not sure why.
At least they're like, yeah, we'll take it back because we have no idea what the heck's going on.
I don't know.
If we admit it, like, okay, something's broken. Who knows what?
We're not sure what it is. We're just gonna swap this stuff out and just
we'll move
go
some
on
things around. See what happens.
Shake it. Kick it a few times.
Kick it. You kick it a few times, see if that takes care of it.
Take it out, blow on it like a Nintendo cartridge from the 80s.
Yeah, knock those little copper particles out.
Yeah.
Exactly. You'll be all good. You just need to blow on it like I like your theory, Roberto. Just blow on it like a Nintendo cartridge every time. And then you're
back
good.
in.
Perfect. What could go wrong? All right. Finally, with EVs, the EU last week put out some draft legislation that for new regulations for CO2 emissions from a whole bunch of things, but particular cars. They want to raise or lower the CO2 emissions, fleet CO2 emissions limit down to. Not sure what the exact threshold is, but basically the current requirement would reduce CO2 emissions by 37.5% by 2030. They're increasing that to 55%, and then they want to cut CO2 emissions from vehicles by 100% by 2035, which would in effect ban any sales of new internal combustion vehicles and even hybrids. If you want 100% reduction, you can't even have hybrids at that point. It's all got to be either battery electric or fuel cell. What do you think? Is this practical? Can we get there?
I think
14 years.
Yeah, but have you looked at what they're requiring? Like I'm scanning through this article, and it's in its proposal. It wants member countries to install charging stations no more than one every 37.3 miles apart on major roads by 2025. That's 4 years, a charging station in every basically 40 miles. That's a significant investment. I mean, I believe that they'll. I don't.
If there was a gas,
we've got gas stations at least that far apart.
At least
but like gas, but
every 20 feet,
every 5 inches. But I mean, I don't know.
If you're BP or whatever other, if you're a British gas station, this is how you make money. Is that there's a proposal. You know what? We can do this because we already have the land, we already have the infrastructure, we already have power because we have to power our gas stations and the little, the food marts. We're going to put these in. You're going to pay us. Awesome. I mean, the infrastructure is there. Yeah, it's just it's really down to these companies saying, "Oh, who wants to be first? We're going to get paid to do this." And so you have EA, which in I guess Europe they have Ionity and a couple other places, but a BP or an Exxon Chevron or whatever, I don't know all the gas stations in Europe, but if they were smart, they would. One of them would try to jump ahead of everybody else and say, you know what? Because this is going to happen, whether or not I partake in it or not, I should try to make some money so that I still have people coming into my stations and buying beef jerky and fancy waters.
Fancy waters.
And in Europe, both Shell and BP have been buying up charging networks in the UK and across Europe. And expanding them, putting those charging stations at their gas stations, and at their roadside service stations. So, I think we will see this happen. I think this is the direction that everybody's going. I think, and the UK has actually said that they want to ban sales of new internal combustion vehicles by 2030, and in Norway, the drop dead date is 2025. Norway's a much smaller market, but after
and they're
that,
all
no more
they
internal
have
combustion.
So many EVs in Norway. That place is
Norway's just EVs. I was in Norway and walking along the highway. They had this really nice, this busy highway, and there was this rather nice trail next to it, and it was the most bizarre thing because it's mobbed. Like the highway is 3 lanes in each direction. It's totally full of traffic, and it had the sound of a quiet little 2-lane road in the U.S. because there's so many. Yeah, it was just the cars whooshing through the air. It was like there's no there, and every now and then an engine would happen. You're like, oh, someone has an actual engine in there. It was very weird.
Yeah, they have EV charging stations everywhere, and what they have is instead of having the cable that goes into your car, they have a port on the charging station. That way, whatever weird port you have on your car, you just bring your it's BYOC. Bring your own cable. You just plug it in and plug it into the thing. And it was
we drove up
oh.
this mountain that was these twisty turny, if your car was too long, I don't think you could have made the turns to get to the top of it to go to some place for dinner, which was very good. But we get up there, it's in the middle of nowhere. It is one little house that has, can seat maybe 60 people, and they have an EV charging station right there in the parking lot. I'm like, seriously? I can't get one at the local Walmart, but you guys have one up here on a mountain for one restaurant.
Yeah.
Over 50% of new vehicle sales in Norway are EVs now. So, I think they were the first country to break that 50% barrier.
Yeah, it's essentially what California is doing by that 2035 time period. It's 14 years. They're not taking away the gas car that you own. I know a lot of people, when I wrote the 2035 article about California, people were like, they're going to take our car. I'm like, no one's taking your car. In 2034, you can buy a gas car and do whatever the hell you want to do with it. In 2035... You
can still go to Nevada and buy one.
Yeah, you can go to Nevada where the laws don't exist. And buy your gas car and, live in Tahoe and register your car in Reno if you're that insane. I got to have a Challenger, which probably won't be around by then. It'll be the Hellcat EV, and it'll have
would it be like a Hellcat, but instead of the demon had red eyes, they put little lightning bolts in his eyes maybe?
Yeah, they'll have those cool little lightning bolts.
Yeah, little lightning bolt eyes instead of the evil red demon eyes.
There you go.
I'm going to shock you like Raiden.
We got your marketing right here, Dodge.
Right here.
All right. Okay, so before we get into listener questions, as I mentioned, I was in Chicago last week for the Abbreviated Auto Show. I had a chance to chat with Trevor Scott, who is the marketing manager for the Ford Maverick, and we'll drop that interview in here. If you're a Patreon supporter, it's been in there since last Thursday, but now the rest of you get to hear it. It's about 15 minutes, and then after that, we'll be back with listener questions. So this is the first public viewing of the new Maverick.
Absolutely. We're excited to be here.
Yeah. So it's been a while since Ford has done a truly compact pickup, and this thing, actually size-wise, lengthwise, it falls right in between where the old Ranger extended cab and regular cab fell in. So it's a fair bit shorter. It's about 10 inches shorter than a current generation Ranger.
Roughly about 10, 11 inches shorter than current Ranger. Yep.
So. There's been a lot of people, over the years that have talked about wanting a smaller pickup truck. How much demand do you think there actually is for a truck in this size? And why now? Why is now the time to bring a smaller truck like this to market?
It's a great question. I think there's, really from. No, we're good, thank you. Sorry. Really, since we revealed in early June, the reaction from a customer perspective has been off the charts. There's been a lot of demand. We obviously opened our reservation experience, and we're seeing that firsthand with the number of reservations that are coming in. What I will tell you is we're seeing a lot of customers coming, as we anticipated, from other vehicle segments, right? So this isn't just truck customers looking at Maverick as an alternative truck. This is sedan, small utility customers that previously would have never expected or even entertained looking at a truck, that based on the total package, based on the fuel economy, based on the passenger seating, and I think just the versatility that the bed affords them, are looking at a truck for the first time. And that's what we expect to play out when we launch the vehicle this fall, is a lot of customers that are looking at a truck as first-time intenders.
So you think a lot of people who in the past might have bought a Fiesta or a Focus or a Fusion are now looking to maybe upsize a little bit, and get into something like this?
Well, previously they didn't have a lot of choice, right? Yeah. So if you wanted something with really strong fuel economy, you had to buy a small car.
Right.
And then you were compromising the space in the interior, where you couldn't store as many things because you just didn't have the size of the vehicle that you needed. Maverick kind of eliminates that issue, right? You don't have that compromise because you get the 40 mpg in the city, you get the 500 miles of range, but you can still fit, your friends and family, and you get the extra bonus of being able to throw stuff back in the truck bed.
So, one of the fascinating things about this, when the announcement was made, starting at $20,000, it's the most affordable Ford branded vehicle you can get now that the cars are gone.
Yep.
It's the most affordable hybrid of any kind in the U.S. market. The most affordable pickup truck by a pretty significant margin over the one competitor that you will have when this launches this fall. So, what was the rationale, in kind of aiming for that price target, and why, or I guess why and how were you able to hit that price target with a standard hybrid powertrain?
Well, I mean, I think when we went back, just a few short years ago and announced that we were moving away from sedans, obviously that left sort of a potential opportunity in the overall Ford showroom from an entry-level affordability perspective, right? And Ford obviously has all the credibility when it comes to trucks. And when we looked at what we wanted to try and introduce in that space, we wanted to leverage a lot of the efficiencies and the learnings that we had from the rest of the portfolio. And so Maverick actually shares its platform with both Bronco Sport and Escape. So there's a lot of learnings and a lot of efficiencies just in how we've actually designed the platform, and then actually used that platform and the flexible architecture of that platform to extend the wheelbase for Maverick and deliver the truck attributes that we were after. And so I think knowing that we needed that affordable vehicle and knowing that for customers to truly consider a truck of this size, fuel economy needed to be an important part of that, the standard hybrid just made all the sense in the world. And we've certainly made sort of decisions on what feature content is most important to this customer to make sure that we can actually afford to offer a vehicle at a sub $20,000 price point and still operate efficiently and still operate profitably.
How much did the shift by Ford to these 5 global flexible platform architectures help to enable you to do this? Because I know back a decade ago when the previous Ranger was discontinued in North America, Ford talked about, for a small truck, at that time at least, a small truck, it cost them almost as much to build it as it did to build an F-150. But people weren't or couldn't spend that much on a small truck. Does that shift to the C2 platform, is that what enabled Ford to do this?
That among a number of other things, right? I mean, I think certainly that flexible architecture in the platforms was a huge enabler, but also a lot of the common parts that we're able to share with other vehicle lines on this platform, like Bronco Sport as an example, helps afford a lot of efficiencies in the build process as well as in the upfront engineering process, right? Because that's really where we had the opportunity to save a lot of time and investment was in that upfront engineering process. And when you have the shared architecture, the shared platform, and a lot of the shared parts, it helps cut down on that total engineering bill when you're trying to bring a vehicle like this to market.
Okay, it makes it possible for you to offer at this price point and still be
recoup your investment.
Economically viable from a business perspective for Ford.
Absolutely.
One of the things we've noticed in the specifications for this truck, standard hybrid, but that's only with front-wheel drive.
Correct.
No four-wheel drive hybrid option. Is that something that at some point in the life cycle of this vehicle we might see?
It's something that we're obviously monitoring, right? I mean, I think, the beauty of this vehicle is how quickly we were able to bring it to market. We shaved roughly about 20 months of typical development time off of this truck, so we brought it to market in just over 30 months. And that's actually remarkable considering that typically it takes,
So early 2019, late 2018?
Late 2018 is really kind of when, we said all systems go. So given how quickly we're able to bring a lot of those things to market, we have all-wheel drive hybrids, as you know.
Escape.
Exactly, right, available across the lineup. So it's something we'll continue to monitor, and if it's something that merits, entertaining down the road, then we'll certainly look at that.
Okay. I think, one of the really interesting things, when this was announced a month or two ago, in the presentations was a lot of emphasis on DIY customers that want to do their own thing. I mean, obviously there's a lot of accessories you can buy. And the same goes for this vehicle's SUV siblings. Especially the Bronco Sport. You've got a lot of partners doing a lot of different accessories, but you're also offering the option for customers to do their own thing and even providing instructions for that.
Yeah, I know. It feels a little bit ironic, right? I mean, obviously, we certainly want to make sure that customers are aware of and have the availability to purchase a lot of our Ford accessories. But what we recognize is the customer that is after this truck, affordability is at the top of their list for purchase reasons, right? And so when you get past the point of purchasing the truck, we want to make sure that they've got the ability to actually customize and personalize their truck affordably as well. So we'll have all those accessories available at point of sale, but for the customers that truly want to be able to do things like put a bike rack in or just simple bed dividers, showing them how they can do that, right? Here's the list of materials that you can get at your local hardware store, and here's the step-by-step on how you can do that. That's, in our mind, I think truly powerful in giving that customer that optionality in terms of choosing which path they want to go down.
And then molding in slots into the bed to enable them to easily do that.
Exactly,
I think that was a really cool feature.
Yep.
What are some of the other unique features on this truck, that you've done, particularly in the interior? I know there's some stuff that you've done that's different from what's been on previous vehicles.
I think for me, it's the storage, right? So you look at a compact pickup like this and you might expect, well, yeah, you got the bed, but where else am I going to put stuff? Well, I think the way that the design team approached this truck and how they engineered the overall design, you take the doors as an example, right? So the cantilever design of the door handle is actually what enables the ability to put tall 1-liter water bottles right in the door pockets, right? So all 4 doors are designed in that fashion. The pockets are so deep, you can put laptops, so they actually extend all the way back here.
Okay, all the way
into the door. So you can put laptops, tablets. There's all kinds of storage space just in the doors alone, and then it extends into the second row. So in the second row, you can lift the second row seat up here, and you've got large storage bins underneath where, you can keep hidden items like...
Similar to what you've got in the F-150 with the pop-up storage under the second row.
Exactly, right? So there's lots of storage capability in the truck beyond just the flex bed itself. And that's, I think, kind of what intrigues me the most is you get the ability to store stuff, hide it, and still use all the passenger seating that you got in the truck.
Mm-hmm. And I sat in the back seat of this thing, and it's fairly roomy. Even for adults. I mean, three adults across the back of this, I think will not be uncomfortable.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. And extending upon the DIY story that you were talking about earlier, you'll see on the back of the first row console here we have this slot. Mm-hmm. What we're calling it is our Ford integrated tether system, and our intention is we'll have a number of accessories available for purchase, so cup holders, storage bins, you name it. But what we intend to do is, alongside the step-by-steps that we're going to provide on DIY experiences in the flex bed, we're also going to provide the CAD data, so customers that are familiar with 3D printing can actually create their own accessories.
Download that data, build their
to
model,
the printer, and then actually go ahead and customize and build their own 3D printed accessories.
So if somebody wanted to do a holder for a tablet for the kids riding in the back seat,
or a phone holder, you could literally produce that on your own and make it your own accessory just based on the CAD data that we'll provide.
And it's there right next to the USB ports, so easy to plug in.
Yep, you got it.
Very cool. All right, so I got to ask one question. I've watched a number of Sandy Monroe's teardown videos of late. I'm sure you probably have as well.
Yep.
If you've ever watched his videos, one of the things that he harps on about endlessly is fasteners. He was a Ford engineer a long time ago. Hates fasteners. I'm looking at these cantilever door handles.
Yep.
Looks like there's 4 bolts in there. Is there actually 4 fasteners holding that on? Or is that just molded in just for appearance?
You know what? That's a good question, Sam. To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that. Okay. So I should probably find that out. But my hunch is that that's more for decorative purposes than it is for functional purposes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
But it's a great question. You stumped me.
I mean, I think this is going to be a very interesting segment to watch because it's a segment that we haven't had in the U.S. market for a long time.
Yep.
At least a decade. Because all the other trucks that used to be small, they're mid-sized trucks now.
Yep.
Ranger and all its competitors.
Yep.
And it's going to be fascinating to watch, how the U.S. market takes to vehicles like this, and it's one other competitor at the moment.
I agree, but I will tell you, early reaction thus far has been really positive. From what we've heard from our Ford dealers and what we're seeing based on the reservations that we have coming through, it's very encouraging in terms of what we're seeing from the customers that are looking at Maverick for the first time.
You've got 3 trim levels available: XL, XLT, and Lariat.
Yep.
Do you have any data yet on, or any projections on what kind of split you might expect to see between those trims?
We're seeing roughly about 20% on our XL series. The XLT model, which we're showing here, is roughly around 50 to 55%. and then you've got Lariat that kind of makes up the difference. So
fairly typical of most of the,
even
like the Ranger.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Spread.
But most of your volume kind of in that XLT model, which is consistent with Ranger, consistent with F-150 as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Trevor.
Absolutely.
Always great to talk to you, and hopefully, I hope this thing is a huge success.
Yeah.
We need more different vehicles like this.
Well, we look forward to having you out at the media drive.
Let's dive into some listener questions. We got a few this week. First one from Adam Jakowenko. Adam asks, I've been trying to help my very car unsavvy aunt figure out her next vehicle, and I'm looking for your thoughts. She currently has a 2018 Honda CR-V, and before that she had a 2011 RAV4. So she likes that type of vehicle because they make her feel a little safer and have all-wheel drive, but she doesn't really need to be that. She doesn't really need it to be that big. Her lease is coming up on her CR-V in October, and she doesn't really want to keep it, even though she has a buyout option, because it has no features or options, not even any kind of touchscreen or backup camera. Actually, I think both of those are on the 2018 standard, but that's beside the point. But I looked up the value of it because she only has 8,000 miles on it and almost 3 years. And so I told her that she should buy out the vehicle and just hang on to it for a while because the MSRP was $21,000 and the current market value is $18,500. So she would be giving a huge gift back to the dealer if she returned it at the lease end. So given that she might hang on to it for a while longer, and we have some time, but I would like her to start thinking about what to get next time when the market is a little bit better for a new car. Her only real requirement is all-wheel drive because she lives in upstate New York. She wants it reliable and something that's a little higher off the ground, so not a sedan or a hatchback. She doesn't need tons of bells or whistles. Her budget is about $22,000 to $24,000. Ideally, it would be new, but used is okay if it was only 1 or 2 years old. But it seems there are so many options in this category, it's hard to choose. Kia Seltos, Nissan Kicks, Honda CR-V, Buick Encore, Volkswagen Taos, Mazda CX-3, Toyota Corolla Cross, etc. Would love to hear your top 1 or 2 options. Thanks and love the show.
Well, so, I can right off the bat, the Kicks doesn't have all-wheel drive, so the Kicks is
you're right, yeah,
is off your list. So if you're going Nissan, you've got to go with the Rogue Sport, which does offer all-wheel drive and is kind of fits her thing. It's a little bit higher, a little bit off the ground, has decent safety features, and it's pretty cheap. So yeah, if you're looking at Nissan, the Rogue Sport would be the one. Just as a heads up, Kicks won't work.
Yep.
Take that off the list.
Take it off the list. I'm a fan of the Kona. I think the Kona is a great little car. You get a lot of value for your money. You can get an all-wheel drive version. It starts within that price range that she is talking about. I think the CR-V and the RAV4 have sort of been priced out of that range that he's talking about. So the Kona might be the way to go.
The Seltos would work too. I think the Seltos will pop into that price range. I think in the base trims. I'm pretty
think so.
Sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
I think there's there's a Mazda that does it too. Is it the one?
Yeah,
that's
the Mazda
disappearing?
CX-30.
Yeah,
the CX-30 starts at about 22.
Yeah, so the CX-30 would work too. So there's those are all
options. In that same, slightly smaller than a CR-V segment. So I think those would be great choices. And if she doesn't want to wait, I think what I would do is I would suggest going to Carvana, seeing what they will offer you on that trade-in, because you'll probably get a great price from Carvana for a CR-V with only 8,000 miles on it. And my guess is the buyout price right now, based on that lease, is probably several $1,000s less than what Carvana will probably pay you for that thing right now. So maybe, do the buyout and then immediately turn around and sell it to Carvana. So now you make a little profit on that instead of giving that profit to the dealer, because and that's what Adam's referring to there. The dealer is going to be making a hefty profit on that because that buyout price is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of, I'm guessing, $15,000, $14,000 to $15,000. And that used CR-V right now will probably go for closer to 19 to 20. the way used car prices are right now. So do the buyout, turn around, sell it to Carvana, and then take your profit and turn it into one of these others like a CX-30 or the Kona, and then go from there. I think what's the Kona EV go for with all-wheel drive? I think you can get that for about $24,000 with all-wheel drive. So I think that's a great choice. Yeah. And there are several other options as well. But I think Kona or CX-30 or Seltos would probably be the ones I would recommend.
Yeah.
The Rogue Sport's kind of at the end of its life cycle. It's going to be replaced soon with an all new model. They just launched it in Europe as the Qashqai, I think is what it's called in Europe. So, all right. Elliot Johnson asks, you're recently talking about one-pedal driving and how you enjoy cars with strong regen. I have friends with EVs who fear being rear-ended when driving this way because the brake lights don't activate when you just take your foot off the accelerator. So they've started feathering the brake pedal, not to stop, but to signal cars behind. Similar to recent autonomous technologies that hand back driving at any moment, this sounds to me like a technology that is making cars more dangerous. Do you agree? Should car makers fix this? Best regards, Elliot Johnson.
All the cars.
No, I don't agree.
Whenever I take, because I remember when one pedal driving was like when the Nissan and the Bolt, the Leaf and the Bolt. When you take your foot off the gas or off the accelerator, like I double checked and the brake light comes on, so I
believe I had asked in one vehicle, and I want to say, Roberto, it was the Leaf, and they said no. If it's braking, like if it's braking, even though you're not putting your foot in the brake, we're going to show brake lights so people know you're slowing down. So I don't know where they got and I'm wondering, is there a threshold? Like if you just eased up off the gas a little bit?
There is a threshold. It's typically somewhere around 0.05 Gs decel, which is that's kind of like what you're going to get from just engine braking when you're coasting. When you lift off, you'll get about 0.04, 0.05 Gs of decel. Anything over that, so any kind of significant regen, they will turn on the brake lamps, even without touching the brake pedal, because for this very reason. So, it's not an issue. This is something that the industry has already thought of, and they've already addressed this. Going back to the original Mini E test fleet that Mini launched back in 2008, because they were the first ones to do this really strong regen, and those also turned on the brake lights as soon as you lift off the accelerator pedal. So not an issue, Elliot. Don't worry about it. Tell your friends they don't need to feather the brake pedal. The brake lights will come on when they're using one pedal driving.
What is the other one?
Next up, Dutch Mandel asks, why aren't we talking about the use of autonomous vehicles that transport things, robots for warehouses, robots for mail delivery, etc., than is in the public domain currently? Are we unable to wrap our heads around that?
I have written extensively about this for Car and Driver and TechCrunch.
Yeah.
No, it's we have those tiny little robots that transport items, but I think you're going to see a lot more autonomous vehicles for transporting things. Actually makes a lot more sense than autonomous vehicles for transporting humans, because they're typically set on there's typically a set route. They have an area which within they operate. They typically will operate during the times when people aren't around. You're at work. It's off peak hours. Typically you're not going to get a delivery at 9 a.m. from UPS, just because it doesn't make sense for UPS to have someone on the road stuck in traffic. And so the sort of autonomous delivery system does make a bit more sense, but you still have to have someone bring things from the vehicle to your door. If I'm in my office working and I work from home, and let's say I'm podcasting, and a vehicle shows up in my house with the delivery, and I have to get up, leave the podcast or leave what I'm doing and go and take it out of the vehicle, there's no benefit in that. So you still have that sort of people still want things dropped off at their door.
It's the last 50-foot problem.
Yeah, it's the last 50-foot problem. So we're still sort of they're still sort of being figured out, But for warehouses, Amazon already has like weird little robots that run around and do something. And then for delivery, I think that's just going to continue to grow at some point. And I think there's still going to be a delivery person inside the vehicle. They might not have to drive anymore. They might be in the back getting ready for the next delivery, which they will, then put on a pallet, like Bright Drops, like I think it's, what's it called? Anyway, they have a mechanical pallet.
Yeah, Toyota's the e-pallet. I forget what the Bright Drop.
Yeah, so Toyota has an e-pallet. Bright Drop has a pallet like where you can put a lot of items on, and so they would park at the end of the block, and then this pallet, which is powered by electricity, they could sort of lead that along and then take things out and drop it in front of the houses, and they do the whole block. They get back in the truck. The truck is already set up. It's already checked out traffic and where it needs to go next, and then it sets on its way. And then the person in the back can either reload the pallet or get the next pallet ready. It's I think autonomous delivery again. It makes more sense because it's a geofenced area, which is not as difficult for an autonomous system to learn.
And there are a bunch of companies that are more focused on the whole delivery market. Companies like Gatik, Nuro, which has gotten a fair bit of attention. They've got a smaller delivery vehicle with a couple of compartments in it that they've been testing for several years now in places like Houston and Phoenix and now in the Bay Area. And there's also even smaller ones, these little delivery bots, these little rovers. In fact, Yandex, the Russian search engine company, which also has their own automated driving program, in addition to their passenger vehicles, they have Yandex rovers, and they just announced last week or the week before, a deal with Grubhub. The Yandex rovers, there's been a couple of Yandex rovers making deliveries in downtown Ann Arbor since last March. I met up with them back in April and got a demo of it. And it's a little, looks like a little wagon, 6 wheels and a LiDAR sensor on the top, some cameras, and it drives around downtown Ann Arbor, making deliveries from Amir's Deli and other places to University of Michigan dorms and anybody else within a couple miles radius. And there's another Ann Arbor-based company called Refraction AI doing the same sort of thing. They've got a delivery bot. So the Yandex deal with Grubhub, they're going to be deploying a bunch of these. Grubhub currently has deals with like 250 universities across the United States, university and colleges across the U.S. Not all of them are going to get these right away, but probably a dozen or so to start, where they'll be using these, to drive on, sidewalks and things like that. So it is happening. Deliveries are happening for automated vehicles. All right, Dutch had another question as well. What is the likelihood that we'll see more non-traditional automotive companies get into the electric and autonomous vehicle space? What kinds of companies could they be? So we've seen a bunch of tech companies get into this sector, obviously Google and Baidu in China and Tencent and others have made investments in AVs and electric vehicles. You've got a lot of EV startups in China. You've got some here as well, like Fisker and Lucid. But what do you guys think?
I think there's still going to be companies who try to get into it. I don't think it's a matter of, are there companies that are going to attempt to get into the space? Sure there are. How many of them are actually going to be able to pull it off? That's really the question, and I don't think most of them are going to be able to pull it off. I'm sure there will be some that will do it and will succeed, but building a car, whether it's an EV or a traditional gas engine, is a complicated process, and it's expensive as heck, and the supply chain and the production issues and the legal issues and adhering to the 9 zillion government regulations, and it's a process. So I think even if you have great technology and a great idea and like this is going to be an amazing vehicle, there's a lot of pieces to pull together there that makes it a challenge for even a well thought out new product to succeed. I mean, heck, they have a hard time with products from existing OEMs that they make a product and they think it's great. And it's like, nope, we made one false move and this product fell flat. So if you've never done it before, I think your chances for success are not great, but I'm sure there's going to be a bunch who try.
it's such a huge gamble because building one car to show off at a show that maybe drives, that's incredibly hard. Building 100 of them, that's impossible. Now scale that. Scale that to where you're building 100,000 of them. It's mind-boggling. It's incredibly difficult. The Silicon Valley is littered with the tattered remains of EV startups that came and went. It's like when you go to auto shows and there's always those 20 or 30 supercar startups that have always been around, and they only still have that one car. And it's always, somebody who's super rich, who's had an idea, and they built one car, and they've just been dragging it around in order to hang out at. Yeah, you're just dragging the same fancy car around to just to be at auto shows. When you're a company, when you're Apple, which is the open secret is that Apple's been building a car since 2014. It's even for them. I mean, these are tech companies that are used to moving fast and having yearly updates, and the car world does not work like that. The car world is not that, and the complexity is so much higher than your phone. Because if my phone crashes, the software on my phone crashes. Oh no, that's an inconvenience. When the software on your car crashes, that's a crash. that's not ideal.
You might be dead.
I think a lot of people, a lot of companies are still going to try to jump into it. They're still going to, we're going to keep having Faraday Futures and Bollingers and Lordstowns and all the other sort of companies are going to keep trying to do this. And you're going to have the big companies like the Apples and maybe Facebook. Who knows what Facebook's doing? They can't even sell the portal. But, you're going to have all these companies that are still going to try. But it is tough. It is tough, and that's when we can talk about the person who runs the company all day about how he might be insane, but Tesla being able to pull off what they've done you have to applaud them for that, because it's an impossible task to do what they have done, and I think Rivian and Lucid are probably the two EV companies that will likely make it out of this batch of EV startups that we've seen over the last few years, and even then it's not 100% because it's. Like you said, it could be one thing, and they're like, oh, okay. I mean,
everyone, people will write off a car like there's one thing that's not quite right, that, the automaker doesn't even know. Something about the seats weren't comfortable, or the look of it just didn't resonate with the public the way they thought, or at the same time they did this other world event happens, and suddenly nobody wants the car the way you've built it. You just... You don't know. And if you've got 10 cars in your stable, okay, one was a dud, that's hard to swallow, but you're fine. If you've got two, or one, you're in trouble.
No one wants to be the EV maker that unleashes the Aztec on the world. And
exactly.
The Aztec,
exactly.
On paper, the Aztec is like, oh, it's like an SUV-ish. It's like you can camp it. There's all these cool things.
Such a cool idea. It sounded amazing.
It sounds like a great, cool idea.
It hit every item on the checklist except for the design.
And then people saw it and they're like, no.
Ew. Yeah.
And at that point, you're already so far down the rabbit hole.
And you can see, and you'd imagine all of the, it's not like it was a startup making that either. Can you imagine the number of focus groups and all those things that they must have had look at that, and enough of them went like, yeah, cool, we love it, that they said, sure, let's move forward. And then the general public sees it and says, oh, that's hideous. And they've got huge amount of research and, like I said, focus groups and experience developing cars, and they still turn out a dud.
Yeah, it's such such a crapshoot.
The reality is that probably 90% of all business startups in any segment fail. They don't succeed. They don't survive for more than a few years at most. And that's as true whether you're opening a restaurant or opening a bookstore or getting into the car business. And the car business in particular attracts big egos and people who think they've got big ideas, and most of them never make it.
They're going to change the world.
Yeah, and occasionally some do. Yeah, but not very often. So
no.
They will come, but most will fail. So all right. We already addressed AJ's question about the Bolt batteries, and just rewind if you missed that. And then finally, Josh Feltz has a two-part question: which is the better VW coupe, the Scirocco or the Corrado, and why is the answer Scirocco?
Because you can say Scirocco-fari. So it kind of looks like
I
a
like
Ferrari.
that.
There you
Yeah,
go.
right there. There you go. That's it. I love the Corrado,
I
but I
accept that
love the
answer.
name of the
I second
Scirocco. I love the Corrado. I wanted a Corrado so bad, but my friend had a Scirocco. And
Did you
she's
want a
like, yeah.
VR6 or a G60?
I don't even remember. I'm just gonna say both. Anything I could have gotten my hands on at that point in the '90s would have been great. But my friend had a Scirocco, and she's like, "Yeah, this is our Scirocco Fari." I'm like, "Oh, that's great."
And once you heard the name, you're
Okay.
like, I would like one, please.
Oh,
For first or second generation Scirocco? The Giugiaro design or the second generation?
I believe they had the second generation. I'm trying to. Yeah, it was second gen. Yeah,
Okay.
they had a second gen. And it was.
What would be your choice?
I like saying Scirocco Fari. You know what? I'm gonna go with my childhood dream of having the Corrado, and say the Corrado
Okay.
because it's sort of a weird bulbous thing. Darn it! Now I'm really. You know what? Scirocco. Never mind. Scirocco. I'm going second gen Scirocco.
I would probably go with the first gen Scirocco. I like the design of that one, but I also like the Corrado. But the problem with the Corrados is they, especially the early ones they had this supercharged 4-cylinder with a weird supercharger called the G-Later, which was it was a scroll type supercharger, it was technically very interesting, but also extremely unreliable. They tended to have early failures, and so you probably, if you get a Corrado, you probably want to get the later VR6 models. But a friend of mine who died a few years ago, he had a G60 Scirocco and loved it, and so yeah, I always liked the design of it, but I would go with the first gen Scirocco. What about you, Nicole?
I'm just going to go with Scirocco because I like saying Scirocco. What did you say? Scirocco Fari?
Scirocco Fari.
Scirocco Fari.
It's like a Ferrari.
I just want to be able to say that. So I'm going to go for that reason, Scirocco.
It's just a weird
I actually saw a really interesting first gen Scirocco at Cars and Coffee a few weeks ago here in Ann Arbor. This guy had a first gen Scirocco, and he wanted to put the VR6 in it, but it wouldn't fit in the front. So he did a mid-mounted VR6 in the Scirocco, took out the back seat, and put in a structure in there and made a mid-engine VR6 Scirocco, and then put an electric motor on the front axle to make it a hybrid. So he's got a plug-in hybrid VR6, mid-engine VR6 Scirocco first gen. So when everything's closed up, it looks like a fairly normal first gen Scirocco, but then when you open the hood and the tailgate, you realize that, whoa, this is not what I expected.
This is not your father's Oldsmobile.
No, definitely not.
All
right.
I was gonna say I'm always curious about the people who create a hybrid, who do a retro mod hybrid, because you have to deal with two different powertrains, and I'm like, how that seems like such. Oh, all I can think, because I want to do an EV conversion of a vehicle I want to buy back from a friend, but the hybrid thing, I'm just like, I don't even know how I would pull that off. And anyone who does it, and they are able to do it with correctly. How about just correctly? How about just works? Maybe not even correctly. How about it just works? I applaud you for doing that, because that is.
Well, it's easier doing it the way this guy did the Scirocco, because what they call a through-the-road hybrid, where you've got the gas engine on one axle, the electric motor on the other axle, and you don't really have to blend them, to feed the torque to the wheels. Each axle kind of does its own thing.
Yeah.
So it's a little easier doing it that way, but yeah, it's still challenging.
I just feel like one of them is going to be either being dragged or pushed. You know what I mean? Like one of the axles is being dragged because the let's say the EV is pulling, it has more torque than does it decouple like the clutch when it does it is there a clutch that decouples the rear wheel so it doesn't get like, if these are rotating at 500 RPM and these are rotating at 400, like what's that doing? Yeah, see, that's all the stuff that happens in my brain when I think about the hybrid retro mods. I'm like, but how do you keep them in okay, maybe I'm overthinking it.
Just a little bit, maybe.
I think I might be overthinking it. I'm sorry.
All right. Any final thoughts from you two?
No final thoughts. I have no thoughts.
Oh, check out my video for the EQS on Engadget. There we go. That's a final thought.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
excellent. We'll include that link, and my video review of the VW ID4 is up on Hands on Tech on Twit now too, and we'll include that link as well.
Cool.
So, all right. Thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
See ya.
Bye-bye.